Hello and welcome. I'm Annette Reeder from thebiblicalnutritionist.com, and today it's about making no-knead bread. We need quick bread. We could have quick bread every day of the week and enjoy it so many different ways. That's what I'm going to share with you today. I am blessed to be able to come to you and to share with you God's recipe for excellent health. And that includes three things that I get to teach you. One is being confident in the kitchen. And that's what we're going to do today, is learn how to make quick bread, enjoy it every night, and let's not do hours of labor doing it. Number two, I also teach you how to be confident in your health. And that is when I come and I teach you about your microbiome, about the different nutritional facts from food, how your body works, and how God designed it. Now, the third ingredient is I get to share with you how much God loves you. I want you to be confident in how much He loves you. So that is part of what I do here at The Biblical Nutritionist. Now, let's get started with today's quick no-knead bread. And I'm going to share with you 5 different recipes that you can use this mix with and enjoy it every night of the week. It's going to be good. Let's get started. Today's recipe, we only need 4 ingredients. Now I'm going to add a 5th ingredient because it's what my husband prefers, but you don't have to add it. We're going to do this quick bread. It's going to have 3 cups of warm water. Now, just so you know, and I've taught you this in other bread making videos, the water is just a liquid. I know, obvious. It could be warm milk. It could be a kefir milk. It could be a broth, a vegetable broth, a beef broth. It would be vegetable water, potato water. It's just liquid. Use whatever you want, but it does need to be as warm as your tap can make it. You should be able to put your hand in it and not like be scalding. So we want really warm water. So we want 3 cups of warm water. To this I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of yeast. Now I have out here my mason jar with my yeast. This is how I store my yeast in the freezer. You can do the refrigerator as well. So once you open up one of the foil packets, just go ahead and empty it into a mason jar, tighten it up with the lid, and then store it. So I'm going to go ahead and stir this. I'm using my Scandinavian dough hook. If you want to just have fun in the kitchen, it's just kind of a delight to have fun tools to make things blend fun. So this is much better than just a spatula because it goes and it scrapes all sides of the bowl at the same time. Then we're going to add 1.5 tablespoons of salt. So far we've used 3 of our ingredients. And now we're going to add 6 cups of flour. You can go 6.5 cups and blend this in. This is where I want all of these ingredients to mix and mix well. So that's why the Scandinavian dough hook is just excellent for this. And I want to make sure there's no flour left anywhere along the sides of the bowl. I want to make sure it's mixed in beautifully. Now this is going to be a wet dough. This is going to be a wet, sticky dough. We're not going to knead it. And that's what makes it a quick bread. It's a quick bread without being a quick bread, if you know what I mean. Like our banana or pumpkin breads, those are quick breads because we don't have a rising agent in them besides the baking soda, baking powder. But this has a yeast, and typically we have to knead this bread, but we're not. We're just going to stir it until it's well mixed. Don't want to leave any of the flour out. Now the grain that I'm using today is a hard white. You want to store your grain in some 5-gallon buckets with a gamma lid, and then you will know that you can have enough grain to last you for many years. I would suggest buying as much grain as you can afford right now because the price just keeps going up. When I first started buying grain, it was 25 cents a pound. So you can tell it has definitely gone up, and now we're paying anywhere from $1.50 to $2 a pound. Okay, there we have our dough. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, I forgot my husband prefers that the bread is a little bit sweet, even if I'm making a savory bread. So I'm just going to add about, and I should have added this earlier, I'm going to add just about a tablespoon of honey. So yes, I should have did this earlier, but if I stir it well, it will still get blended and it will have the flavor that my husband prefers. So sometimes you can overcome mistakes like this, and other times there's one mistake in bread that you cannot overcome. If you forget the salt, your bread's done for. Not even the birds will eat it. So it's just one of those steps that you cannot ever forget is the salt. All right, well, that's blended up really well. As you can see, I have a nice sticky dough, and that's how I want it. Now I'm gonna let this sit for 2 hours. I'm gonna put this lid on it. I'm not gonna put the lid on 100%. It needs to have a little bit of space because it's going to create gas. It's going to start working. The leavening agents are gonna start working, so I'm just gonna leave it cracked just a little bit, but I want it to sit in kind of a warm location, not heat by a stove, but just warm, not by a cold vent. And I'm gonna let this sit for 2 hours, then we're gonna make our first bread. Now remember, I got 5 to show you, so stay tuned through all of these. They're so delicious. Well, our dough, it looks so gorgeous. And I use the word gorgeous a lot because my granddaughter loves that word. So look at the bubbles. Look at those bubbles in there. Let me pop off the lid. Oh, you can just see how jiggly it is? That is perfect dough. You can see the bubbles all through the sides. Oh, this is so perfect. What we're gonna do is we're gonna just kind of blend it up, pull it in a little bit, get a little bit of flour, pull that in, and we're just gonna take part of this dough out and we're gonna make it into just a loaf of bread. Most of you have a pan that you can bake in, so that's what I wanna use. I wanna use what you have. For the next steps, we're gonna get a little bit more creative. But our first bread, our first of 5, is just gonna be a loaf of bread. Now I'm gonna go ahead and just take part of this dough out, and this is what we're gonna use to make our bread. Now I'm gonna put the lid back on and let that continue to do its magic. I can put that in the refrigerator, and I can use that dough for up to 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, I can just keep grabbing a pinch, pulling it out, and then making it into whatever I want. So we're gonna be making some delicious treats. So I'm just gonna keep working this around, making it nice and pretty. Keep working it into a nice ball of dough. It feels so alive. It's like, what were those games when we played when we were young? You know, it's like the silly putty that would slink out of your hands. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put that in my pan here. There we go. I'm going to shape that and just set it in my pan. And what I'm going to do next, now it doesn't look like a lot. I could have used probably twice this much dough, but I have so many things I want to teach you that I'm making this kind of a small dough. And now I'm going to make some incisions. You want to go down about 1 inch with a really sharp knife. And this is going to help the dough to rise better and just to look so artisan. Then I'm going to take some of my seeds. I have a collection of sesame seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, all in here. And then I use them to top my bread for it to look really nice. Now I'm going to let this rise and come to double. So it probably will go all the way up to the top of the pan, and then we'll bake it probably right around 20-27 minutes. So that's quite a variance, but it's going to depend on your oven and how much dough you put in the pan. So our temperature is 375, anywhere from 20 to 27 minutes, and we're going to have our first loaf of dough. Well, now it's time for our second recipe. We're going to go ahead and open up our dough. As you can see, all of those bubbles, that means our dough is doing fantastic. And it's still a little bit more jiggly today. I'm going to go ahead and take out about 1/4 of this. And it's been in the refrigerator. So I'm going to take that out. And I'm just going to work with it a little bit. I'm going to bring some of this flour over here. Now we're going to make cinnamon rolls. And not just cinnamon rolls, we're going to make apple pie cinnamon rolls. I was thinking about this and I thought, I wonder if anybody's ever done this before. And of course, someone already had thought of it. So I'm just going to keep shaping and working with my dough just a little bit, just to kind of shaping it up. You can see I don't really have a lot of dough, but if we're making bread maybe every day and we just want to do something quick, I don't need a lot of dough because, for one, we only have 2 in our family. But this is going to make several cinnamon rolls. I mean, I could probably make almost a dozen cinnamon rolls. So this is going to do more than it looks like. So there I have just a beautiful, it feels so good when it's alive. Sometimes when I first started off with my mock meal, I didn't have it set right and my grain was just very grainy. It wasn't fine enough. And so I didn't have that really soft feeling in my dough. All right, so what I'm going to do is roll this out for our cinnamon rolls. And this is going to be a treat. Steve's going to so love this. And Trixie, my Sheltie, she loves it when I cook too because there's always something to be found on the floor. We've trained her really well she has to kind of ask permission if she can eat something off the floor. She has to kind of like pause and like, hey, can I have it? Can I have it? So that's always good. Ooh, look at that dough, it's so good. All right, and remember we didn't have to knead it. It just already works well. So I'm going to make about, I'm gonna make, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go ahead and make this, cut it like a pizza. I should have made it a little bit more round to do this, but this will still work. So there's 4, and then we'll go ahead and do this one. So this is how we're gonna do it. Now there's a reason why I want more of the crescent roll type shape. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna coat it with some butter. You can use honey if you wanted to add a little bit more sweetener to it, but you need something for the cinnamon to adhere to. You need some type of liquid base. So it would be butter. If you were making a savory bread, it would be olive oil. But for cinnamon rolls, we're going to use butter. You could use coconut oil too. That would give it a nice flavor and be very nutritious. On this, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle my cinnamon sugar. Now, it may look a little white because I powdered my sucanat. So it looks a little bit heavy on the white side. And that way it sprinkles really well and I just have a more finer texture. And I just like the way it works. So just throw your sucanat in the blender, put it in a dry blade, and then that will work well. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and use my dough scraper. As you can see, my dough scraper and my rolling pin, my 2 favorite tools in the kitchen. Next to that, the third one would be my Fisky. Now, you want to stretch your dough as you pull it. Let me just pull that out just a little bit. There we go. And there's my cinnamon roll. What I'm going to do now is just make it into like that. I'm just going to put it into my muffin tin like that. And I want to press it down so I have kind of a well. So there's a couple other ways. Let me just go ahead. I see how that one's filling that up, so I can go ahead and cut this one in half too. So that way we'll have a better number. Now, if I would have worked with this just a little bit more, it wouldn't be so sticky and still wanting to come apart. Definitely a little bit more flour would have helped with that. And so there we have kind of our crescent roll, cinnamon roll, number 2. Press it down in the middle, and then I want to form sides. Now you could go ahead when you're rolling this out and you've got your base and you add your cinnamon and your sugar, you could go ahead and add some freshly ground nuts. You could add coconut. You can add some fruit, maybe some dried fruit. That would taste good. However you like your cinnamon rolls. Now our next step is we're going to take these cinnamon rolls and we're going to put some applesauce. I have my own homemade applesauce that I'm going to dish on top of it. I keep my applesauce pretty chunky. For one, it takes less time to cook, and for 2, I like it chunky. That way if I ever want to use it in another recipe and I still want some chunks, I will have that, and I just like it that way. I do have probably out of the 50 jars that I probably have about 20 that are totally pureed, but the rest are always a chunky applesauce. I like to make sure my grandkids know they're eating grandma's applesauce and not out of a jar. Of course, they should know that just by the fresh flavor of it, but just in case, Chunky means grandma's applesauce. Okay, now what we're gonna do is just add a little bit of topping. So I went ahead and made my own topping. The more I can teach you how to make your own, the less you'll need to buy processed foods in the grocery store. Okay, I said that, but then the first ingredient I used was a cereal. I will go through the cereal aisle only to see what's on sale and what's organic. Many times organic cereals, they just don't get bought by the expiration date, so they go on sale usually half price. So for this, I ground up in my blender some cereal that was high protein, high fiber, and then I added to it some toasted oatmeal, some coconut, and some butter, plus some pecans, and a little bit of sucanat. Now I ground that up into my blender. Now I'm just going to add a topping to my cinnamon rolls here. These might become a holiday favorite for your family, or just maybe one of those birthday morning specials, or these actually qualify as a dessert. If you do desserts once a week at your house, my husband says we used to do desserts once a week. Now we hardly ever get desserts. Well, this could definitely qualify as a dessert. There we go. Those are ready to be popped into the oven. Now these cinnamon rolls, they do not need to rise because they are more of a quick bread. So I'm going to pop them in the oven at 400. I'm going to check them at 10 minutes and then at 15 minutes, and they should be done. Now for our third recipe, we're going to make garlic knots. For garlic knots, once again, I'm just going to take a portion of my dough. Now your dough may not make this many recipes. If your family's bigger, you may only make 2 recipes or maybe 3. But the point is, I wanted to make 5 so I could show you all of the different ways you could use this dough. So let me put my tray over here. Let me just work with this dough a little bit and just keep folding it over and working it into a nice ball. Garlic knots are like a quick go-to for something for dinner. So if you had this dough in your refrigerator, and remember it can keep up to 2 weeks, you keep it in the refrigerator and guests show up and you're like, oh, I don't have a bread or something hearty to go with my soup, and you want to make some bread. Well, this is the perfect bread to do. So garlic knots are so quick, so easy to do. Just want to keep turning that. I'm kind of pushing it under as I do this, and you can see it's turning into a beautiful loaf that I can easily manage. All right, so what I'm going to do with this is just keep working just a little bit more. I only need about a tablespoon of dough, so not very much. Still a little bit sticky, so let me get a little bit more on my hands to manage this. And then I'm going to just make sure they're nicely cute and into a cute ball, and I'm just going to place them on my tray. Now I'm using parchment paper, but as we go into a season of food being expensive and you have to decide how to spend your dollars, parchment paper is a luxury. It is not necessary to bake with. Just spray your pan or use just a little bit of some olive oil or some butter on it, because we don't want to be using toxic sprays either if they have some of the aerosols in them. And then use that. Parchment paper, muffin tin cup holders, we don't really need those. They were just kind of part of the season where we spent a lot of money on fun things. And so I'm all about fun in the kitchen for sure. All right, so we just want to take these and make them into just about a tablespoon, and just keep turning them and shaping them into a nice ball. And then we're going to bake them at 350 for 10 minutes. And when they come out of the oven, now that's where the flavor comes. There we have our pan ready to go in the oven. They do not need to rise. So once again, you've got company, grab the dough, make some little balls, throw them in the oven, and when they come out, toss them in the sauce and serve them. Super easy, super fast. Our garlic knots just came out of the oven. They're hot. Now, we need to mix up this mix. So let me share with you how I did it. Normally I use fresh herbs and just crush them up and chop them up, but I realize not all of you have fresh herbs. So this time I used my regular seasonings up in the cabinet. So I have 1/4 of a cup of olive oil. And to this I added 1 teaspoon of salt and 2 tablespoons, normally freshly ground garlic, but this time I used the powdered garlic because I thought you may have that on hand. To this I added some minced oregano, some parsley, some basil, and some rosemary. Mix that all up. The ingredients don't matter how much. You could just use 1 teaspoon of each if you're using dried out of your pantry. Now we get the fun part. We just toss our rolls in, turn them over a couple of times, let that olive oil get in there and be seasoned, and then we'll start arranging them on our plate. Remember, you just got a call, guests are coming for dinner, your dough was already in the refrigerator, you quickly made it into some balls, popped it into the oven, took it in about 10 minutes to bake, took them out of the oven, they're hot, dinner's ready, they're waiting to sit down, and then toss them in your sauce here, which is the olive oil, the cheese. Normally I use freshly shredded Parmesan cheese, but this time I used out of the container, because I wanted to do it the way you might already be doing it, or with what you have on hand. Right? Keep tossing them through the sauce, arrange them on your platter, and everyone's gonna think, wow, where did you order these from? These are so good. And you're gonna say, order them. I just spent all day making those for you. Well, you really didn't, but you could just say, oh, that was just a quick 10-minute throw together that I did just for you as soon as I knew you were coming. Now this part you need to get into your garden. Go grab some rosemary out of the yard, which is what I just did. It's about 20 degrees out there, but I still have rosemary all year round, and just decorate your plate with that. And then, serve your guest, and you have just the perfect appetizer or the perfect bread to go with your meal. So what do you think about the garlic knots? I know you can do it. The recipe's right there in the Satisfied Baking with Whole Grains. I love that cookbook. That has my favorite bread recipes. So enjoy, be thankful. So there's our garlic knots. Recipe number 4, we're gonna make a savory flatbread. Now this is similar to the Israeli flatbread, the Jerusalem flatbread that I made before on a video, so go check that out. And I also taught you how to make one of my favorite ingredients, which is za'atar. I talked about that in another video, so I hope you can go check that out. Okay, got enough dough to do this. And as you saw with the garlic knots, we ended up with 10 garlic knots, so plenty to serve, 4 people for dinner. They are very satisfying, especially when you realize when you're milling your own grain and you have that extra fiber, it is just so much better. All right, I'm just gonna kind of work with this dough just a little bit. I don't want it quite as sticky, so I'm just gonna add little bits of flour to it with my hands. Just keep shaping it around. Just trying to keep my hands well floured. And again, I just love playing with this. My daughter-in-law, she gives it to her kids to play with, the little ones, and they make all kinds of fun stuff with it. Just kind of pulling on the top, and I'm just kind of pushing under on the bottom. All right, that feels really good. And it's ready when it just feels good. So again, I'm using some parchment paper. It just makes quicker cleanup for me. And then I'm just going to press this out. Make sure my fingers are powdered. And I want this no more than a ½ inch, because I don't want it any thicker than that, because it's going to rise. Let me get a little bit more flour on my fingers. Now, what I'm going to do on top of this is I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil. I don't want a whole lot, but I want enough to give it just a hint of that olive oil flavor. There we go. And I'm pretty much a fingers person, so there we go. I like cooking with my hands. I do garden a lot, so I have to make sure I am scrubbing my hands a lot. There are probiotics in the dirt, but I don't think you want them in your food. There we go. To this, I'm going to top it with some za'atar seasoning. You could use any blend of oregano, some basil, some rosemary, any blend that you want. This also, you will see, has some sesame seeds in it. Just do it this way. Now, what I wanted to tell you about on the cinnamon rolls, which is the same here, when you have milled your own wheat, the flavor of the wheat is a lot stronger than just working with processed white flour. processed white flour has no flavor. So when you add a little bit of cinnamon to your processed white flour, you can taste the cinnamon. Well, it's not true when you have real wheat that has all of the nutrients in it and you have all of the burst of flavor. Now, I'm adding some grated cheese. I would have used feta, but I didn't have any, so I'm using some freshly shredded Gouda cheese. Now, back to the other thing, so we just want to always make sure we're in control of the ingredients. So when you use a freshly milled wheat of any variety, whether it's emmer, einkorn, spelt, kamut, hard white, hard red, it doesn't matter. It's going to take more flavorings to be able to taste the flavorings. I remember my first cinnamon rolls is like, where's the cinnamon? I just did it like I used to do it, and it's like, okay, that didn't work. I put all the seasonings on now very liberally. This is the only time I'm a liberal, is when I'm adding seasonings into my cooking. Now I just added some Gouda cheese that I just shredded myself. You want to always shred your own cheese, because if you don't shred it and you buy it shredded, you're getting a lot of anti-caking ingredients that your body does not know what to do with. And if you're like, hey, I want to be healthy, well then get rid of all of the anti-caking ingredients. And I'm just going to add just a little bit more. I already have the cheese shredded, so I'll just add just a little bit more. You know how the pieces on the end always seem to be a little bit light. Well, there we have it. Once again, just like the other two recipes, I'm just going to pop this in the oven. It does not need to rise, and it's going to be so delicious. So this could easily serve 4 people for a dinner. You might need to make more if you have more than 4 people for dinner. This will go well with your soups, salads, any type of a Mediterranean dish, a bean dish. It's going to taste good. Well, now we come to our 5th bread, and we're just going to make a Dutch oven loaf of bread. It's going to be a small loaf. We don't have a lot left, but it's still going to look cute, and it's going to taste delicious. And believe it or not, it's such a small loaf, but it would still feed probably 4 people at the dinner table. Let me just add a little bit of flour to it. Flip that in, make that same dough that we did for the last several recipes. Just keep folding that in. And you can see we've been putting these recipes together really quickly. We have the oven is cooking now, cooking all of those recipes. The bread we made already, that was made yesterday, and then we put the dough in the refrigerator overnight, and it just helps it to do its magic. So I'm just going to keep flipping under. Some people, you know, if you have a bigger loaf of dough, you can just keep, you know, pushing it under like that, however you want. Now this 5-minute bread recipe was made popular by the original person who came up with it, which her name is Zoe. I forgot her last name, but she has a great cooking show on Magnolia Network. Used to be DIY and now it's Magnolia Network. And she wrote the book 5-Minute Bread. I highly recommend getting that. It's been out for quite a while. I remember when it came out, it was quite a hit in all of our Treasures of Healthy Living Bible study classes. Everybody was enjoying making the bread, and just so much simplified doing it this way versus, you know, the 5 loaves at a time. But it's definitely depends on how many people you have in your home as to how convenient this recipe is. But a lot of you have smaller families, and then some of you have large families, so however you can get it to work for you. But you do need a bowl to keep the dough in. Remember, it'll stay in here for 2 weeks. Now, I had it sitting on the counter, and I told you, make sure you keep it a little bit popped. Well, I thought, you know, I'm just going to see what happens. So I closed it up, and I was working on another project, and all of a sudden, boom, my dog went crazy, and I realized the lid had flown off. The gas had expanded, so definitely has some bubbles in this. So just keep shaping that. So you have up to 2 weeks to use this dough. So if you are during the holidays, you know you're going to have people coming, or you're going to take things to different people's houses, or you've got some, you know, people that you know that are getting ready to have a baby or have surgery, and you're like, wow, if I had that dough already made up, I could quickly put together some fresh bread for them. And that would be so delicious and just such a treat for them as well. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to, normally when you cook in a Dutch oven, you want a little bit bigger loaf of bread, but we're just going to have a really small loaf of bread. It's still going to look good and it's still going to taste good, but the reason I keep working with it like this is I want it to develop the gluten just a little bit more so it rises up versus spreading out like a cookie. So now that I got my hands a little bit sticky again, just do a little bit more. There we go. I'll put that on our parchment paper. Now, if you were going to feed a lot of people and you really wanted to impress them with your artisan skills, then I would do about at least half the dough. And then you would have a nice, beautiful mound, and then you'd be good. On this, we're now going to make some slits in it. We'll just go ahead and let it sit and rise while we're waiting for our Dutch oven to get hot. And then we'll put this in our Dutch oven and then make the slits, and then we'll bake it. Well, our Dutch oven is hot. It is definitely hot. That's like opening up a sauna. And then normally this would be a bigger loaf of bread, but it's a little tiny, but that's okay. You would pick it up by the parchment paper and set it inside. It does look a little lonely in there being so little. And then we want to make some marks on it. You want to go down pretty deep, pretty much an inch or more, to make some artisan marks on there so that when it bakes, it opens up and just looks so beautiful. All right. Well, it looks kind of like a baby. Let's hope it grows up to be a big loaf of bread so we can definitely serve it. I'm now going to bake this in the oven at 350, and I'm going to check it on the time, and then I'm going to take the lid off 5 minutes before. It might look done at the 15 minutes, but then I'm going to take the lid off and let it bake some more to get nice and brown and look pretty on the table. Well, the baking is done. Here is our flatbread, and this is going to be so good. And that extra olive oil mixture that I had for the garlic knots, we can use that as a dipping sauce for this bread. Not that you're going to need it, but it would still be delicious if you did. So this can easily be shared by 3 people at a dinner table. Unless it's me, and then I may want a little bit more. Our loaf of bread, it was bigger when I baked it, but that was last night, and we have enjoyed some of it. So it was a little bit bigger. And it's not real big. None of these recipes are very big, but I wanted to do 5 recipes to share with you. So they're a little bit small, and I could have let this rise just a little bit more, but I'm telling you, flavor beats everything. Just remember that flavor beats looks, flavor beats size, flavor is it. And then you already saw the garlic knots, so delicious. And then our cinnamon rolls. Yes, our apple pie cinnamon rolls. So delicious looking. I haven't tried one yet, and I can't wait to try them. This is going to be such a treat for our family. And then, last but not least, is our little baby loaf. So using the parchment paper to take it out of the Dutch oven, we have our beautiful loaf of bread, and just so delicious. It smells so good. It smells like, it's almost like a sourdough bread smell. It is. My kitchen smells really good. You should come visit sometime. So if you want to enjoy good food, if you want to understand good biblical teaching, then we let God's word speak, and we get to enjoy it together, because together we are the biblical nutrition family. So it's not just a nutritionist, meaning me, it's all of us. We are the biblical nutrition family. And I'm so glad that you're a part of it. Please share this video with those you love. And let me just say one more thing. The world is trying to confuse, and when we have confusion, we have chaos. God's word has never been about confusion or chaos. He's always very straight to the point, and the point is this: He has an everlasting love for you. He has loved you from the moment of conception. He knew at conception how He wanted to share your life, how He wanted to share with you how much He loves you, and He created you just as you were when you were born for a specific purpose. Remember that. Never forget. Sometimes life gets lonely, life gets sad, life gets hard, but God is still there waiting to help you through it. I'm Annette Reeder from thebiblicalnutritionist.com. Enjoy all of these breads. Go check out the 5-Minute Bread by Zoe. Great book. I'd like for you to have that. And then also pay attention to the Satisfied Baking with Whole Grain Goodness. This is definitely my favorite bread book. It should be flying off the shelf. This has so many good bread recipes in it. I love the apple pie French toast that I made too. So I'm a little bit into apples around here. You may have caught that. And I definitely want to help you learn how to make bread. Thanks for watching.